You want your trainings to be effective, of course, but there's a couple of things you should then really take into account. Hello, I'm Tom. Welcome to my channel where we make operational excellence practical. And today we'll be discussing a bit why do you do trainings and what does that then mean for how you set up the trainings. It's an important part because we like to do trainings, and I unfortunately see quite a couple of companies do trainings for the sake of training or because it sort of fills the training budget, it looks nice, we get some certificates. That is not an effective way to spend your resources. I mean, it's probably better than those companies that I see that basically don't do training because it's difficult to track what good it is anyway, and my people should be training themselves. That really is not a healthy way to upskill your organization either. But let's check out that middle ground, right? So first of all, I think it is super important to know that there are a couple of different reasons for training, and there is two main categories. Now, Tom, you will say, the compliance trainings, they are also about competence, right? If I'm thinking about a forklift certificate, certain safety instructions, they are also about the competence to work safely. True, but in all honesty, you've got a bunch of trainings that you are just supposed to do. Now, the people definitely need to know that stuff. They need to prove that they understand it. There is almost always, especially for the compliancy trainings, there is an examination, theory or practice. But in all honesty, the reason why you set up the training that way is out of compliance ideas, of compliance structure, not per se to pick the best choices for your competence framework. Yes, it also conveys competence, but they are not really a task package. They are not optimized specifically for the things that you need to run a good process. They are there to guarantee safety, mainly, right? Environmental safety, people safety, food safety, all kinds of safety, but that's generally what's needed here. And then you've got the competence first type of trainings. Now, competence first type of trainings, well, there still is quite a difference in how we approach them. Basically, the choice is between what are my minimums, or I want to standardize specifically a way of working. What I mean with that is, what do you really need to be able to do to perform a process correctly? To operate a machine, a complete shift, do all the things that are needed, including the registrations, basically the whole thing. What do you need to at least be able to do to be an accountant and to follow the accountancy rules, to work within the finance department, to work within your software packages, just to be able to do your job without errors, in a standardized way. This does include often quite some compliancy aspects as well, right? We need to make sure that people understand what they're doing so that they're not making the mistakes, that they're not behaving in, let's say, dangerous ways. Now, what then is mastery? Well, that is basically people already can do their job, but you want them to be better at it, or they want to be better at it. I can say with about 80-90% accuracy that you will be now training in this field here. If you are taking like my video as a course to get your minimum competency levels up, not likely, right? You are already doing a job for which you have basically all of the minimum criteria. You can do your job. Maybe you're upskilling to a next job and you need to learn a couple of things about Lean, Six Sigma, TPM, management, continuous improvement, but probably you're at that level where you can do your function profile, your job, but you want to get better at it, and good for you, by the way. So these are basically the three types of knowledge that we get into, the types of competence. Now, when we are talking compliancy trainings, then basically you just want to know, did somebody pass the exam or not? And is there an expiration date on that? Almost always there is, but up until when are they formally competent, formally compliant with this type of training? I've got a forklift license that is valid for 2.5 more years. That's one of those typical things that, when the time comes, you will need to renew that license. Same for first aid, same for all kinds of safety systems, all kinds of specific competences. These can also be there for all kinds of, office type jobs, right? To get your registered accountant license, well, there's a certain number of credits per year you have to do. Okay, that's slightly different way, but in the end, you got your, yes, you are compliant, you are trained enough until, and then you need to do some stuff to get that extended. So when we are talking industry, this is usually the big safety kind of things, the quality and safety stuff. What you want to check is, who do I need to perform this role, right? And be a little bit broader than your minimum required set of people. Who do you think would want to jump onto a forklift here, right? Who would, let's put it like this, who would your team leaders like to put on a forklift? Because what your team leaders want to do, that is basically what happens on the floor, right? You may be in HR, you may be in continuous improvement, you may be the manager of those team leads, maybe a team lead, then but you can say all kinds of things, but when it's at night, when there is no support staff and somebody went home sick, who then drives that forklift? Get them trained as well. Make sure that you've got enough people compliantly trained and certified that your team, your production team, this is logistics and production and any operations, right? That they can run those tasks with a certified person, because they have at least 2, preferably more, certified people in their team. So with that, you get a list, who should have it, and then it's just the bookkeeping of, have they got it, what's the expiration date, and about 3 months before it expires, you set up some new training again. You start collecting the names, you pick a group together, plan a training, and then about 1.5, maybe a month before it expires, do that training, get the certification done, and extend the certification. Now this is roles based. You need to know who should be able to do this, and then it's just yes, no. For competence, you know, I will not get into those details in this video, but you know that I like to use a 4-level system, 5-level if you say that level 0 is so the entry into the department, but a 4-level competence system on the workplace. So this really is for operational types of jobs, where you have a number of people doing the same job. That's for me an operational type of job. This can be an accounting office as well. And there you have this, what knowledge do I want to have standardized? Because you want the process to be the same, especially when you have a bunch of people doing what's basically the same process. They should all be doing the same process. And also when you have a number of people working together on one type of production line, on one type of larger process, you need to know that they follow standardized procedures, because they have to rely on the product of the first one, right? So they have to be able to do the process, their tasks as prescribed, so that the intermediate product is the same and the second person in that line can actually also use the standardized methods. So you want to have a standardized set, you want to have people competent in a process, basically in the minimum of that process. Now, of course, this 4-level system, like super basic, like personal and people around you in product safety, and then you get this basic competence of you can run the process. You can be planned in at that line or at that logistics position. You can be planned in on a workplace. Then that 3rd level is you really know what to do. You understand that process well enough so that you can really be left alone. You can troubleshoot. When there is some strange type of breakdown, you know how to handle it. When the machine or the product behaves a bit differently than usual, you know how to handle it. So that is a fully trained, good, competent operator, right? Not just a button pusher, somebody who really knows their process. And level 4 is they can teach others. But this still is really in that standardization of your workplace, of your processes type of mode. So those are the key concepts you need to do your core tasks. So you make packages, learning packages per workplace, right? This is job centered per workplace, and you also do that registration for the total package. So for the workplace level, you go with this 1 to 4 rating, right? From 0 to 4 rating. These contain all of the things you need to do a job properly. So that also means you can check if people actually do this, if they really can do it. Of course you did that in an exam already, here as well, by the way. But especially for these type of competence packages around the core process, you should also have process control. Now for the mastery part, it is slightly different. See, people who are training for mastery stuff, they can already do the core package of their workplace. Or maybe it's not even per se needed. It's a bit added on, a bit extra to make you more efficient, to make you faster, to make you feel good about yourself. But it's about those mastery things. So those accountants in the office, well, they need to be able to work with Excel and something like SAP or Oracle. But what is being able to work with Excel? Well, you've got this package of minimum stuff that you really need to be able to do. But Excel is large, right? Will it help you if you can also use the filter functions, the database functions, the subtotal stuff? That is not per se needed. But most, if you are a bit of an Excel-based accounting department, then you'll need to be able to use pivot tables, for instance, which is not the same for all people. And if you're in accounting, right, fair to say that those are almost in the core package. But to what extent can you use them? Can you also add VBA code on top? That is all stuff that will just help you in your work. The same goes for a lot of other functions. Now for the pure operational functions, maybe yes, maybe no, right? We would like to have many of them so that, because you want to share the knowledge, really packaged into that level 3 of the workplace competency, right? The good tips, the interesting, well, better maybe, the stable and optimized ways of doing things, like those. When you're a more experienced operator, you understand this, this, and this, and here we've got a number of tricks. But when we talk mastery, well, a technologist, for instance, again, very broad set of tools. An engineer, very broad set of tools. For a team lead, also, how much leadership training, leadership style should you do? So, to boost that, you can definitely pick still the topics that your people should learn, right? If you are a manager or an HR, you can still sort of assess where is my team a bit weaker, or a better question maybe, where would my team benefit from upskilling, from giving it a bit more attention? Do we really need to get that feedback in active management, in servant management? Maybe yes. Maybe finance for non-financials is the thing. Maybe an Excel course is the thing. You can sort of decide that, but also make sure that those professionals that are in your team, and they come with their wishes. Ask them which parts of the job would they like to improve in. Why are you watching this video, right? You want to improve something in your operational excellence management, maybe specifically in your HR or training approach. This is not part of your company training package. You are doing this for the mastery. So, and that is also the way to think about it. These are the things where it's yes, no, but exploration, it can all be in, right? But quite honestly, you're just interested in the work product. So, provide courses, maybe not forget the exams, but forget the exam registration, forget the expiry dates, forget even the specific certificates. All of those things are very nice for the person who attended the course. I mean, it is, if you're going to do a green belt or a black belt, that is usually in here as well for most companies. Of course, it's great that you get a nice certificate, right? It ups your value in the labor market a little bit. It gives you bragging rights, so to say. But for the company, that is not as important. When your company sends you on a green belt course, they then expect you to be able to do problem solving and to be able to also run improvement projects in an effective way. That's what you need to show them, right? If you then show that you can improve the processes in your business, nobody's gonna check if that course maybe expired or was already 8 years old. Ooh, yeah, no, we'll have to send you to a new course. No. When you can do the work, that is where the extra efficiency or the extra tricks in doing the work that they come in. So treat this as training for competence sake, but without the registration, right? We do not register the course stuff or the learning side of those mastery type of learnings. We do that with our competence packages because those are the minimum things we need a person to be able to do to run that workplace. So we need to have that in our planning system. We need to know who can we put on which workplace. So that's why we need that registration. We also want to link that up with our people actually doing the methods that we decided are the standard for this workplace. So you need to register this. The compliance stuff, because it expires and you'll be liable if you don't renew the training and the certification, you need to be able to see who has almost had their certification expired. So registration is needed. The mastery, please don't. So that is when you are thinking about what training packages to order, but especially how to register the trainings, think of this again, right? Yes, I know many companies have an HR system where you just say the training list. I do plenty of these trainings as well, where I then get a list of, who are the participants. This was a 2-hour training, signature of mine, signature of theirs. This is more honestly accounting of the cost that goes in, right? Because everybody spent 2 hours there in that training because they paid me to do the training, but it's not super useful for that. But when you are thinking of how am I going to use the trainings, because we need it, otherwise we're just not legal to go ahead, because we need it to do the minimum for a workplace. So that's what we really want to test. Practical exams showing me that I can now do those basic and standardized tasks at the correct level, and we also register that so that afterwards we can plan people. But here it really is about, do you now work more effectively? It is a growth and feedback cycle, and we provide courses to help you live that. That's why these don't really need to be registered at all. These do not have an expiration date, because we actually assume that you get better and better the more you practice it, and this is more of a check, so it needs to have that expiration date because laws and external auditors and what have you, they expect it from us. So use those. Think about what type of training, what type of competence are you managing before you set up the tracking system, because there are real differences, but also before you purchase that training, because there are real differences. I hope you liked that video. Let me know which other training topics you would like to have covered. Maybe some tips, for instance, on how to do training for different types of audiences. I can assure you that there are differences already here, but also managers versus just new into the company versus pure compliance, different training styles. If that's the thing you like, let me know in the comments. For now, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I still have plenty of views from people who are not subscribed, which actually also means that maybe you are sharing this with colleagues and friends. That's also great. But let me know some of the love you have for the videos, okay? For now, I wish you the best of luck managing your trainings for more effectiveness for your organization. And as always, don't forget to also enjoy the continuous improvement journey.